Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm David Talbot. I'm Managing Director and Head of Research here at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We are going to hear from North Shore Uranium's President and CEO, Brooke Clements. Now, during today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we'll take some questions. We'll get to as many as we can. Please type them into the chat box. But before we kick things off, first, we need to discuss the fine print. During the North Shore webinars, forward-looking statements may be made, so I direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of the corporate presentation. That can be found on the company's website, northshoreuranium.com. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on North Shore. With that said, why don't I turn the floor over to Brooke to speak about the company.
Thank you for the introduction, Dave. Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming. I'm proud to provide you with an update on North Shore Uranium, a new uranium exploration company that went public a year ago. We have 2 properties with proven uranium potential at the eastern margin of the Athabasca Basin in Saskatchewan, Falcon and West Bear. In the spring, we completed our first drill program at Falcon, and the results were encouraging. Our exploration methods worked, and we hit near-surface uranium at 2 sites where there had been no previous drilling. Along with the new discoveries, we have a number of other compelling targets at Falcon, and that's mostly what I'm going to talk to you about today. A new discovery of a high-grade uranium deposit in Saskatchewan, especially one near the surface, would be very valuable. The world now is waking up to the fact that we need more uranium to meet our ambitious CO2 emission reduction targets. At the COP28 meeting in Dubai last December, 20 countries, including the US and Canada, signed on to a declaration pledging to triple nuclear power by 2050. A lot of uranium will be required to meet those goals. In September, 3 banks, including 14 financial institutions, including Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and Bank of America, endorsed that resolution, which implies that they will be there for the financing of nuclear and uranium projects in the future. Also in September, Microsoft signed a deal with Constellation to restart one 835 megawatt reactor at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania, which had been closed since 2019. Also, a number of the other people like Google, Amazon are all talking about deals to get their own nuclear power to power their AI centers in the future. And one thing to note is all the demand for future AI and things like that is really not in the supply-demand projections right now. This is a forward-looking statement that Dave talked about. We've got a great team committed to building the company, and I'm going to highlight 4 team members. I've spent most of my career working in northern Canada in jurisdictions similar to Saskatchewan. I was fortunate to lead teams that made 2 significant diamond discoveries, Renard and Chidliak in Quebec and Nunavut for Ashton and Peregrine diamonds. And both of those companies were the subject of takeovers because of those deposits. Jimmy Tom, a director, was the vice president of exploration for Paladin, and he has deep uranium exploration and development experience. Blake Steele was the president and CEO of Azarga Uranium, which sold to Encore Energy in 2022 because they had in situ uranium assets in the Western United States. They sold for Canadian $200 million. And Alex Molyneux, who's the former CEO of Paladin Energy, is a founding investor. We went public in early November 2023, raising $2.3 million. We have just under 40 million shares issued and outstanding. Our current valuation is about Canadian 2 million, and approximately 42% of our shares are held by insiders and founding investors. And a very positive thing is that 14.92 million shares, or about 37.5%, are held by 6 founding investors. And those shares are subject to a voluntary pooling agreement that restricts selling those shares before October 19, 2026. This is a location map of the Athabasca Basin showing active mining claims in purple. You can see it's a really busy place. Based on the production from 2 mines, Cigar Lake and McArthur River at the eastern edge of the basin, Canada is the second leading producer of uranium in the world, behind Kazakhstan at 13%. You can see our West Bear and Falcon properties in orange and blue. And ore from McArthur River is processed at the Key Lake Mill, and ore from Cigar Lake at the McLean Lake Mill. We like the east margin of the Athabasca Basin as a target for basement-hosted deposits. The area has not been explored as intently as within the basin with sandstone cover, and any new discoveries will probably be pretty close to the surface and close to the existing mills. This is an overview of our Falcon property. It's 55,700 hectares in size. 12,800 hectares in 4 claims shown in blue are 100% owned by the company, and the remaining 11 claims shown in aqua are subject to an option agreement with Sky Harbor, where we have an option to earn an 80% interest before October 2026 for a total consideration of $5.3 million, with $3.5 million of that being exploration commitments. You can also see there's a few uranium occurrences in purple, including the Zone B resource and the 2 places where we hit uranium earlier this year, which I'll talk about a little more later. The property is about 30 kilometers east of the Key Lake mine, which produced about 209 pounds of U3O8 between 1983 and 2002. This map shows historical work on the property. Drill holes are green squares, and there have been about 50 on the current property since 1969. We have a lot of really good geophysical data to work with. Modern EM magnetic surveys were flown in 2006, 2007, and 2013. And you can see the outlines of those in purple and orange. And in 2022, we flew a gravity radiometric magnetic survey over about both Sky Harbor and North Shore flew a gravity, magnetic, and radiometric survey over about 90% of the property. And that is outlined in black. And that data is a really good complement to the earlier data, giving us an edge. And one thing just to point out is back in 2006, 2007, 2008, the spot price of uranium was sky high. It hit $140 in 2007. During that period, there was a lot of exploration in the Athabasca Basin and companies setting the table with really good data, including these surveys flown in 2006 and 2007, and 28 holes drilled on our current property in 2008. The financial crisis came in 2008. The price dropped like a rock. Then it started to climb back up, hitting about $75. And then in 2011, Fukushima came. And again, it dropped, and it was at $25, $30 for about 10 years and just started rising in 2021. So people set the table for really good exploration programs, but they really didn't finish the job. And we want to finish that job using that great data. This shows the Falcon property with the EM conductors on the Sky Harbor option claims. You can see very strong, dominantly northeast trending conductor systems, and the area outlined by the red circle is where we drilled this year, and I'm going to take you there. This is a close-up of the EM showing the 3 places we drilled, P3, P8, and P12. We hit near-surface uranium mineralization at P3 and P8, and at P12, we abandoned the hole at 107 meters due to unstable ground before reaching our target depth of 125 meters. The drill sites were chosen using 3D plate models of the conductors made using EMIT Maxwell software. You can see an image that shows the plate models in the vicinity of P3 and P8. Just on this Google Earth image, you can see, again, the 3 places we drilled, and the drill holes as green circles. For our first drill program, we wanted to be away from any previous drilling. This is a cross-section of P03. At P03, we hit a brittle fault zone at 196 meters, and in that zone, there were five places where we had over 100 ppm U3O8, 3 with over 300 ppm, and we also encountered strong silica and chlorite alteration associated with the fault zone, as well as elevated nickel and molybdenum. We consider greater than 100 ppm U3O8 anomalous for our project. This shows a cross-section of P08. At P08, we hit near-surface uranium that we really didn't expect above the modeled conductor. First, from 42 to 47 meters, we hit up to 572 ppm U3O8 with an average of about 316 ppm over that interval. We also hit elevated uranium between 67 and 71 meters, 2 samples with over 100 ppm U3O8, and at the projected conductor depth, we hit a brittle graphitic fault zone with elevated uranium and some hematite, chlorite alteration, as well as patchy silica alteration. These are all things that often associated with major uranium deposits. We've divided the property into 3 exploration zones, 1, 2, and 3. To date, we've selected 36 targets in those 3 zones, and most of the targets, or all of the targets, are associated with EM conductors, with most of those shown in red on this map. And our goal is to work through all the data in these targets and come up with a top 10 list of targets to choose from for our next drill program. I'm going to take you to 5 areas just to illustrate the type of project generation work we're doing. The South Priority area, the South Walker area, FA19, FA25, and FA24 and 29. This is the South Priority area. The purple box includes the 2 places where we hit near-surface uranium, P3 and P8. We look at this as a potential significantly mineralized trend, and we are looking at targets along that for future drilling. A couple of targets to note within that trend. At FA04, the conductor is offset near a major fault intersection. Offsets in conductor systems and faults intersecting conductor systems can be places where uranium mineralization is focused. And I want to call special attention to targets FA03 that's within this 3-kilometer mineralized zone, and FA02, which is just south of that zone. You can see both of these targets on this map. On the right is a close-up of FA03 on a gravity map. And you can see at FA03, the strong conductor system splits, with one fork going to the northeast and one to the northwest. The same thing happens with a very prominent magnetic low. And also you can see there's a strong gravity low, which is in blue. And the gravity low also kind of mimics the fork in the conductor. Gravity lows can be associated with alteration, which could be associated with uranium mineralization. On the left, you can see target FA02 with the magnetics. There's a very strong linear magnetic low and two strong parallel conductors that are complex. Also intersecting the conductors at that target is an interpreted fault. Using the 3D models, we've already come up with a couple of compelling targets to drill related to this target zone. Now, the South Walker area. When we're selecting our targets, there's really two types of targets that we're thinking about. One would be to go into areas where there has been previous drilling, and using the new data that we got in 2022 and our interpretation methods, ask ourselves, could previous people have not drilled in the right place or missed something? So looking at that. And we're also looking at areas where there has been no drilling and looking at brand new targets, like the two places where we hit uranium earlier this year. Along the South Walker trend, you can see that there were 3 holes drilled in 1979 by Brynex. Those holes are shown as yellow circles, and there were 6 holes from 5 sites drilled by JNR Resources in 2008. And they hit some alteration and fracturing, but no significant uranium in any of these holes. And you can see down here, 750 meters south of the nearest drill hole, P12, where we did not quite reach our target depth of 125 meters. So when we're looking at this zone, do we go back and complete the hole that we did not finish, and or drill somewhere else based on our interpretation? And just one thing that we're looking at right now is this target FA10. This is where JNR drilled 6 holes from 5 sites, and you can see on the left there's a very prominent gravity low anomaly shown in blue, and you can see the traces of the drill holes in as purple arrows, and you can see that they really didn't fully test that gravity anomaly. So is this a target maybe that we, after we model the conductor, that we go back and test the conductor in a different place and maybe make sure we test the gravity anomaly? That's an example of how we're using the new data that we acquired in 2022. So now, just to get your bearings, I'm going to take you up to the northeast to target FA19, and then over to FA25 and FA24 and 29. Okay. This is FA19. It's south of the main conductor trend, and there's a strong 1 kilometer long EM conductor here. And it looks like it could be offset by that interpreted fault to the west. Also, there's a very strong uranium anomaly in the radiometrics here. The nearest drill hole was 2.5 kilometers to the west, drilled in 1979. And it's worth noting how in 1979, they identified the same conductor system that we've identified from the more recent survey, and maybe they even saw that north-south fault that we have mapped. So good data in 1979. It was a little wider space than 200 meters, and it was fixed wing. Now over to the west, we'll go to FA25. There's a lot going on at FA25. As you can see there, there's a power line going right through the middle of the target. That power line was constructed in 1990. To the south of the power line, we have strong EM conductors, and mapped more or less coincidence with the power line is the D zone showing, where in 1978, AGEP Canada found a uraniferous vein with 1.26% uranium and 0.8% molybdenum. They went out there looking around to follow up an EM anomaly from a 1978 survey that they flew. And another thing to note is just northwest of the D showing, there's an anomalous lake sediment sample collected in 1979. It had 38 ppm uranium, and that's pretty significant. The program had over 400 samples, and this was one of the 5 best. They went around with a helicopter and just touched down briefly and took sediment from the edges of the lake. And there were 3 holes drilled related to their conductor system in 1980, and each of the holes was barely more than 100 meters. They described hitting some graphite, which they believed explained the conductor. And there were 2 samples from 2 holes. One had a 1 meter interval, had 54 ppm uranium, the other 36 ppm, along with chlorite, hematite, and kaolinite alteration. And we went out there in 2022 and we found elevated radioactivity associated with the outcrop along that power line, but we weren't able to locate the vein, probably because of disturbance related to the power line and vegetation growth since 1978. So when we're looking at this, we're going to model the conductor in detail, and we have to ask and place that in the context of the drill holes and ask ourselves, were those 3 shallow holes enough to explain this conductor and that showing? And I don't think it was. I think this is a very compelling prospect. Okay, and finally, we'll just go to FA24 and FA29. This is about a 650 meter long conductor system. At the south end of it, associated with our target FA24, you can see there's a 400 meter offset in the conductor, which could be interesting. And to the north at FA29, we have a fault intersecting the conductor, and there is also a gravity low anomaly there. So more work is clearly warranted on this conductor. So that's it for Falcon. I've taken you on a brief tour of Falcon. We discovered new uranium occurrences this year, and I hope I've convinced you that we have a number of other compelling targets to evaluate, and also follow up on the new discoveries could, show great potential for new uranium discoveries. And that's it. So I just want to summarize the company. We started as a private uranium exploration company, North Shore Energy Metals, in early 2022. We acquired our first West Barren Falcon claims then. In October 2023, we quadrupled the size of Falcon in the deal with Sky Harbor. November 2023, we went public. In March of 2024, we drilled our first holes and we hit uranium, and now we're working to generate targets for a future drill program. And I think at our valuation of Canadian $2 million, we represent really good value for exposure to grassroots uranium exploration. And we have a lot of work to do, so stay tuned. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. Great presentation. We'll now kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar. Reminder, everybody online, you can get to the questions, type them into the chat box, and we'll get to as many as we can. So Brooke, your company went public about a year ago now. We've seen some spectacular uranium price and uranium equity market volatility here since. But how would you sum up the ride for your company, North Shore?
The market over the summer is been pretty tough, but we see it improving, and we see the possibility of, a lot of money initially went into the producers and larger market cap companies, and I think now people are starting to look down cap. So I'm optimistic about the future for uranium exploration for a company like us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you've chosen the Athabasca Basin to focus on. Now, why target projects along the east side of the margin or even outside of the basin itself? What are the benefits for North Shore when you do that?
Well, there's a few, there have been a few kind of high profile discoveries made just outside the basin, specifically the baseload Akio and the Atha GMZ discovery. But we just think that there hasn't been enough exploration. There could be some structures that, for example, at Falcon, just 30 kilometers to the east, there was a world-class mine at Key Lake, which exploited both basement-hosted uranium and within the sandstone. But we just think the area hasn't been explored, and anything that's discovered will be near the surface, which it's cheaper to explore and of more interest.
Okay. And your Falcon property, it's huge. Maybe give us a little bit more color on how you whittle down and prioritize these drill targets in your 3 exploration areas.
Well, the first thing we did was go through all the conductors and our geophysical consultant, along with geologic information. We just picked right now 36 spots along the conductor, including the places where we've already drilled, where there are special characteristics, maybe structure, strength of conductor, the dip of the conductor, offsets, and stuff like that. And then already we're whittling those 36, and more may come as we go, but whittling those 36 down to a manageable number for a drill program, 5 or 10.
Mm-hmm. Now, those EM targets, your 3D plate models, do those help you find mineralization specifically, or do they help you find or locate regional structures or alteration? What are they really targeting?
They really, the complexity from faults and things like that, or things that guide us to the mineralization. The plate models just really, we like near vertical plates, and the plate models just help us target where the conductor is. We think we're in a really good neighborhood with proven uranium, and it's just a matter of finding the best place on the conductor. But the plate models don't specifically guide us to mineralization, but when we see complexity in the plate models, that's something that we think can be indicative of mineralization.
Yeah. And this year in your drilling, you did target those EM conductors. You hit on structure, you hit on alteration, even anomalous mineralization. So next year, do you plan to follow up on those, or maybe drill areas you didn't quite drill deep enough, or do you just look elsewhere and keep hitting other priority targets?
A combination of both. And whether we go specifically to the places where we hit uranium and drill different angles or right there, or just along the trend, looking again at the geophysics, what we learned, we hit there, and can we improve upon that anywhere along the trend, really?
Okay. And that 7 million pound Fraser Lake B zone, it's low grade uranium bearing pegmatite. It's close by, not on your property. You decided not to actually go after that, but not quite what you're looking for. Can you tell us what type of deposit you are searching for?
The main thing we're searching for is a basement hosted, structurally controlled basement hosted deposit. But there are a lot of pegmatites in that area, and a lot of them have uranium mineralization. So we're also interested in that, but our primary target is a higher grade basement hosted deposit.
Okay. And your West Bear project, is that similar? And any plans to put boots on the ground there, or even get to drilling this year? next year?
I don't know about drilling, but definitely plans to get boots on the ground. We have 3 targets that we prioritize for further investigation. Yes, the same. 80% of West Bear actually has sandstone cover, so there we're exposed to both unconformity, hosted mineralization, and the basement structures.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Maybe to wrap up here on the corporate side of things, what's your current cash balance and what do you need for next year? I guess that includes option payments. And when might you look to fund the project?
We're looking at funding options right now, and cash and an imminent receivable, we have about $280,000 in cash. Okay. So, and we are working to get funding right now.
Okay. And what are your plans for next year? What would you like? Best case?
What would we like to?
What would you like to spend? What kind of budgets do you think you might have next year?
We'd like to have a drill program 1 to 1.5 million budget, drill multiple targets, and also do some prospecting and mapping in the field.
Excellent. Okay. And the company's pretty tightly held here. I think you said 42% of the shares are held by insiders. And, I think there's both positive and negative here, but the negative side is it means you have a lower float, so less, lower trading liquidity. Do you have any plans to increase liquidity if that's even something that's needed?
Yeah, we're always working on it. Through disclosure and marketing, and if we do a financing, that'll increase our float and all those normal things that people do.
Yeah, business as usual. Okay. Oh, interesting story. So great. Well, thank you, Brooke Clements, North Shore Uranium. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave, and I appreciate the attention.
Okay, thank you everybody else for tuning in. Our next webinar is tomorrow, so that's November 13th, when Tim will be sitting down with Raina Silver. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you for supporting Red Cloud's webinar series.